You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
We all have smartphones, and we all know they're pretty amazing, but they also can be amazingly distracting, especially when we're around other people. So US Cellular wants us to reset our relationship with our phones by putting down our phones for $5. That's right, a company that sells phones wants us to put down our phones. And to see what we find, learn more at uscellular.com/built for us.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, OTAs are coming up. Mentioned that on the podcast yesterday, kind of in passing. But I figured what would be kind of fun, because, you know, the first thought is, okay, OTAs are coming up, so what do we talk about that? And I don't know. It's kind of a big event, but I don't know what to say. I was like, well, I guess we'll just do a refresher on what OTAs are, you know, this is what you do. And run around, catch, and fair enough. Maybe do a little bit of that. But then I thought, why don't we get more specific and look at exactly what happened last year? Now, the only drawback, and I'll admit this kind of sucks, because the big reason you want to talk about OTAs is because it's exciting. Like, dude, crazy stuff's going to happen. Guys are good. Unfortunately, part of the process we're going to go through right now is another little bad habit that I have, which is telling everybody that's excited to calm down. And it's preemptively. And it's not on purpose. It's just an interesting thing. But there's no way to go back and say, hey, let's revisit some of the stuff we were saying last year and not go, oh, yeah, that was stupid. Oh, yeah, that was stupid. Oh, yeah, that was stupid. Some of it's good. Some of it's dead on. I'm just letting you know right now, if that is something you don't want to hear, not that I'm going to lay into it. It's just talking. But, you know, it's going to kind of ruin a little bit of the, you know, when the article comes out, like, guess which rookie really stands out. That's going to be exciting when we hear that. It's not going to be as exciting if a week ago you listened to the Packernet podcast and I went through like 3 of those articles and it was always something stupid. So fair warning. Where we go from there, I don't know. We'll see how long this takes. I got a list a mile long of different topics to discuss. Spend more time collecting ideas than actually expending them on the podcast. So I want to go in chronological order. The OTAs last year started the 22nd. By the way, OTAs this year start the 20th. So the dates are 20, 21, 23, 28, 29, 31, and then it is June 3rd, 4th, 6th. Then after that, you have on the 11th is Packers mandatory minicamp. That goes the 11th, 12th, and 13th. So that is that. For those that don't know, OTAs are organized team activities. I just expected that to roll off the tongue, and I'm like, is that right? Yes, it's organized team activities. So many activities. But you're going to have, obviously, multiple days of practices. These are all non-contact and OTAs. Kind of working through, a lot of it is the playbook install and getting them to understand the fundamentals of how they play, so we don't need pads and contact at this particular point in time. Trying to get the technique and fundamentals down and whatnot. There will be some like 7-on-7, 9-on-7, 11-on-11, those types of drills, which always make for something fun. Fortunately, you don't have, I know there might be some special circumstances. Generally, these are not the ones that are open to the public. That's later in the year. But media is still allowed in. Sometimes they're allowed to take video and stuff, so we get to see a little bit of it. Sometimes not so much. That's at the discretion of the team, but The bottom line is we'll be able to see the team line up and play against each other, and that'll be kind of fun. On top of that, obviously, we're going to be hearing from the coaching staff. They're going to be going through and, as the media makes observations, like, hey, I saw this. We're going to be talking about the different alignments and different things that are happening and all that kind of good stuff. So it should be a good time. So I want to start on the 23rd. Obviously not going to go through every single thing because I can barely get through one day of OTAs on a podcast to begin with, but just to kind of give a little bit of that flavor. So for example, this is when we start to see tweets like this from Bill Huber where he says, and now Love to Watson for a touchdown versus Nixon with a backflip to punctuate. By the way, Watson, love you, dog. Had your back since day one. No more backflips, all right? No more backflips. There's also obviously a lot of other things going on around this time. There were quite a few signings that took place. One of them was Mr. Jadakiss Bonds. Probably vaguely remember who that is. One of the observations from OTAs was that Keyshawn Nixon was blitzing off the edge. There's a tweet from Matt Schneidman says, Keyshawn Nixon coming off the edge, not fooled by play action and swats down Jordan Love's pass in the flat. Might see more of that with Nixon at nickel more this season. So this is kind of an example of what I'm talking about where we get certain impressions that maybe this is one of the major changes that we see. And I could be wrong. I don't think that was a major change that we saw. If anything, that was Matt LaFleur going over to Joe Barry and saying, hey, can you please do this so that we can kind of get Jordan Love some different looks? You know what I mean? I know it's not really your style, but do it anyways. And I think one of the biggest problems, and again, feel free to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to say all this stuff, and then when I see stuff, I'm going to get excited about it. Sometimes people are going to go off about some 7th-round pick, and I'm going to be like, really? We got to do this again? Okay. And I could be wrong. I could be right. It doesn't. It's just fun, man. You just pick a side and you go. But I think one of the biggest issues, if I can just kind of cut to the end of this, is I don't know why. This always sticks out in my mind. And I don't even remember exactly how it was said, but it was something to the effect of there was some claims that certain things had been predicted in the Bible. And I don't mean like actual passages. I'm talking about like if you take the first letter of every 100th page, that kind of stuff, like secret hidden codes, which is also kind of funny because it's like, you mean in modern day English? Does this code also work in Koine Greek, or is this just something stupid that we decided to do? Okay. But the point that my dad had made about why it was stupid had less to do with whether it was even real or not, and more to do with the fact that it's not even a useful discussion because it only works in reverse. Nobody can ever find these codes until after it happens, because an event has to happen. Then you have to try to go back and find it, because there's no logical process to figuring out which ones are right and which ones are wrong. Like I could take every 75th letter of everything, and it could spell out like Jim Stevenson, dead. Like, dang, what's that mean? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a useful thing in terms of being able to predict anything. It's kind of the same thing here, where it's like some of the stuff that we're going to find is going to be dead on. Like, this person could be a breakout candidate, and sure enough, they were. Whoa! But then there's going to be 4 other articles saying stuff, or observations like Keyshawn Nixon might be coming off the edge more that are not true. And the problem is none of it ends up being really useful because we don't know which ones are true and which ones aren't. And it's basically the hit rate of just random. It's just randomization. So again, it's mostly just for fun. Almost none of the information we're going to get is going to be useful in terms of who looks good and what kind of changes we're going to see and this and that or the other. Unless you observe something, especially when you're talking about a brand new defense, maybe it makes a little bit more sense as opposed to Joe Barry coming back for like the 3rd time. Like, oh, is this going to be some radical change? Probably not, bro. Unless the coaches explicitly say so, which even if it was true, I doubt they would want to talk about it a ton. Like, yeah, we're going to blitz Keyshawn. Like that was a fundamental thing we talked about, which is not how that works, by the way. How can we adjust the defense? Let's blitz Keyshawn. That'd be crazy, right, bro? Like, let's just do it. I think it's a little deeper than that. But anyways, comment from Matt LaFleur after the first day of practice said he was implementing more unscripted periods in the process or in the practices than in the past. He wants to see what the young guys know and what they can handle. So it'll be interesting to see if that's a continuing process, especially since it's still a pretty young team. By the way, there is every reason to expect this is going to be a very different style of OTA. The absolute main focus last year was Jordan Love. right? Like we focused heavily on offense. We focused heavily on red zone. We got the defense throwing crazy stuff at Jordan. Why? Because we don't, and that's not to say they're not still going to try to really focus on Jordan, but it's a very different situation when you don't even know what you have in Jordan Love and you need to get him ready for his first ever season, as opposed to this guy really kind of gets it. And maybe we want to start allocating some of our resources to some of the supporting cast, specifically the defense that is now on its heels because it's the one that's a little behind the eight ball. It's just funny going back and seeing and remembering that it was like a big deal that Jordan Love was. So, for example, Matt Schneidman took a small video from kind of far away showing all the cameras and everybody surrounding Jordan Love. And it was so crazy because it's like Jordan's never had that before. And, you know, we've never had anybody but Rodgers get this kind of treatment. Such a novel thing. Kind of an interesting note with Eric Stokes. I know, you know, again, anything positive said about Stokes didn't necessarily materialize, largely because of injuries again. But if you look at it, Ryan Wood had a couple comments from Eric Stokes. As cornerback Eric Stokes says he tore his meniscus last season, which wouldn't have been too bad, except he also had a Liz Frank injury. Both required surgery, ending the season. His quote was, "Shoot, I can walk." It wasn't shoot, but it was essentially like him saying, "I'm just grateful that I can walk." Number one, highlighting again how unbelievably severe the injury was. But then secondarily, there was this. He says, Eric Stokes says he hates watching the film he put on field before his injury last season. He says his success as a rookie was a byproduct of just being himself and having fun. Last season, he says, was decidedly not fun. He's hungry to put that behind him. Now, again, that did not materialize, largely because of injury. Remember, he didn't even step foot on the field until very late, and then he was so far behind, he looked kind of awful. But also remember, last year was not fun anyways. The people on defense were really unhappy. If the goal for Stokes is he needs to be healthy and he needs to get back to just flying around and having fun, I'm not sure there's a better situation for him to be in right now, especially with a cornerback coach, a DB coach, as your defensive coordinator, and some very overqualified coaches like Ansley, who is going to be your DB coach, on a scheme that is more geared toward allowing you to just fly around and play football. With, you know, even if it's a bad scheme, bad coach, whatever, year one, there can at least be some fake excitement. So the bottom line is, I'm happy that he's kind of set up for success, but also there's really no more, not that there ever was, but there really can't be any excuses. You have to be healthy, you have to play well, and you have to show that you can play at a high level. We can throw in a little caveats here and there about, you know, if you got off to a slow start, you had some bumps in the road, it's year one of this scheme, so there's a little bit of confusion. You haven't really played in 2 years. There can be some grace here, but we got to at least see it. You got to have that, I hate to use this example, but sort of that Kevin King against Julio Jones moment, where we can at least look at it and go, okay, this dude can be special. Yes, that can be an illusion, but I'm just saying there has to be something like that to show that it can be real. There was an article written, to be a nice little summary, by Bill Huber, highlights from practice 2 of Packers OTAs. I went back and looked at it. I don't know why they have Packers practice 2, 5, and 8. I either can't find the other ones or they just don't exist. Play of the day. During the starters versus starters red zone period, Love fired a pass over the middle to tight end Luke Musgrave. Veteran linebacker Devondre Campbell came out of nowhere. Well, he came from the defense's right side, darned in front of the pass and almost made an interception. The Packers certainly could use a rebound season from Campbell, an All-Pro in 2021. Moreover, it's plays like that by savvy veteran defender that will make Love better in the long run. Again, a couple things. First of all, if you remember, things were pretty ugly for Jordan Love in OTAs, training camp, etc. That's not how a lot of people would portray it. They're like, no, there was a lot of good in there. But remember, it was always like the first half was garbage and then he picked it up at the end, or vice versa. It was always just like, he never just always put it together. But then beyond that, again, it's like, oh, here comes the Devondre Campbell bounce back. Yeah, okay. Player of the day, Lucas Van Ness. Really impressive in his first appearance in front of reporters. All right. It says, at one point, Van Ness drove the left tackle into the lap of the quarterback. At another point, he wasn't fooled at all on a bootleg and was right in Danny Etling's face. Also, good reminder that he's probably playing like second, third team. On a running play, the 6'5" Van Ness ducked underneath the blocker and blew up a handoff. Van Ness aligned outside linebacker and on defensive line. Wherever he lined up, his explosiveness was on display. Quote, I think he's done a nice job, and certainly you can see the skill set that he possesses, says Coach Matt LaFleur. He's a big, strong, fast guy. He's a worker. That's all you can ask for. And we're going to keep putting more on his plate and see what he can handle, et cetera, et cetera. Again, lots of hype. I like Van Ness. I'm excited and optimistic about Van Ness. Really was not a dominant rookie performance. A couple extra little bullet points down at the bottom. Keyshawn Nixon blitzed off the slot. We talked about that. Rookie receiver Jaden Reed fumbled. It's another funny thing that when I looked at this, a lot of the hype was about guys that didn't do much, like Lucas Van Ness and Carl Brooks and whatnot. I know there's excitement about Brooks and Wooden, but I'm just saying. Nothing about Jaden Reed, and now the first thing I see about him is that he fumbled. Fellow rookie receiver Dentavian Wicks had a strong day. He got himself open for a touchdown pass from Danny Etling. And this is a perfect example of foreshadowing, but having no way of knowing that this would be real. You look at that and go, wow, Dentavian Wicks, a freaking late-round pick, got open for a touchdown against the Threes with Danny Etling was able to get the ball to him. Whoop-de-freaking-do. That would be my take on it. And I would have been wrong. It was also right around this time we found out that the Green Bay Packers would be hosting the draft, so that was a big news break thing. The next day on May 24th, the Green Bay Packers signed safety Benny Sapp. Oh, and then this little gem. The PFF, Sam Monson, who is a part of the social media / reporter crew, which, by the way, they hate their own PFF grades, as evidenced by everything they've ever said ever. This is an article written May 23rd. PFF quarterback rankings, all 32 starters ahead of the 2023 NFL season. I could leave this for a separate thing, but it's funny to just look back. So let's just go ahead and do it now. The top quarterbacks, in no particular order, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Herbert. Rodgers, they have 5. I'm not going to dock him for that because for all we know, Rodgers was going to be 5th or even better. He got hurt, so we have no idea how good he was going to be and potentially will be. We'll get a better clue of that later. Lamar, Jalen, blah, blah, blah. But then you start to get a little rocky as you move on. Deshaun Watson was ranked 13th. Jared Goff, 16th. He was pretty much a top 5 quarterback, I believe, last year. Daniel Jones, 17th. Freaking yikes. Justin Fields, 18th. Here's what they had to say about that. Justin Fields won himself a starting job last season with almost no help around him. Now, technically, that's sort of true. If by won the job, you mean the GM stupidly decided not to draft a new quarterback because he thought the quarterback class kind of sucked, sure. I guess it was smart of you to not say earned, because I would have absolutely crucified you for that, using, your own grades. But anyways, new general manager Ryan Poles stripped the roster of talent around him, and Fields was still able to emerge as one of the most dynamic players in the league. I think the PFF ranked him 36th. 36th. And also their grades would reflect that, again, although there were certainly issues, the offensive line was nowhere near as bad as a lot of people said it was. The stuff that I was saying largely came from PFF. And the crazy thing is, I'm right and PFF is almost always wrong. Why? Because I actually use PFF's tools. The thing that actually makes PFF useful, not the people spouting nonsense that aren't even using their own statistics and grades. You would think you would use that as a selling point, but no, they don't. So instead, they rank Fields 18th. They claim that he did a great job and that he's only going to get better. Good Lord. And of course, they highlight Darnell Mooney. He's going to be a big part of this, blah, blah, blah. It's so stupid. They have Mac Jones 21st. That's still too high. Brock Purdy 23rd. Whoops. Granted, I don't know that anybody necessarily saw this coming. I know his MVP odds were really, really low. But still, Bryce Young, 25th. Jordan Love, 26th. Baker Mayfield, 28th. Wildly disrespectful. C.J. Stroud, 30th. So yes, you'll have to excuse me if I'm a little bit skeptical about some of the talk that's going on about things that I'm supposed to know, because this isn't just PFF being stupid. This is PFF being stupid because they'd rather regurgitate what everybody else is saying rather than use their own frickin' data and brains. This is largely what a lot of people felt. This was it. I mean, Rodgers was going to be elite with the Jets. Jordan Love was going to be garbage. C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young were both going to be pretty garbage, although Bryce was probably going to be better. All the revisionists going back talking about how stupid the Panthers are. Bro, you all thought he was going to be better than Stroud, so don't even start. And Anthony Richardson, 32nd. Again, we have no idea, but I have a feeling Richardson would not have been 32nd. Colt McCoy and Desmond Ridder were above Richardson. McCoy ahead of C.J. Stroud, hilariously. That might be the biggest thing. But anyways, yeah, this is where we were at. And of course, at this time, I'm sure, and I got to do a better job of doing this, going back and finding out the podcast and what I was talking about and all that back in the day, because it'd be kind of funny to kind of revisit it. I guarantee you, I was going on a freaking tirade about how stupid it is. In fact, I would bet I talked about this exact article. Because it's stupid. And I was right about that. So when we go through, and I'll revisit this again, this is a larger topic probably for another day, but if we go through and look at the rankings of where quarterbacks are going to be ranked, you know what? They're going to be god-awful, just like they were last year. And if I were to pull up something and slap it on social media and say something about it, about how stupid this is, I would get crucified because how dare you doubt what everybody knows? And the rookie quarterbacks are a big part of it. Now, I don't know how it's going to pan out, but it is basically guaranteed right now. Caleb is going to be elite. J.J. McCarthy is probably going to be trash, at least for now. You know, we'll see maybe in the future. If he even wins the job, he's going to suck. That dude might be C.J. Stroud for all we know. Remember, Stroud was ranked where? We have no idea what's going to happen. So no, I'm not buying any of it, positive or negative. I want to see it. And I don't mind taking swings or guesses or whatever, but do not freaking tell me that I'm stupid because I don't just accept what everybody else says. Moving on. By the way, a couple of the Packers reporters kind of leaned into this. Bill Huber had, he wrote an article, opposing defenses could help Love surpass expectations, and kind of talks about how bad a lot of these defenses were at stopping quarterbacks. But embedded in this article is FanDuel Sportsbook recently posted over-unders on passing yards. Love's opening number has been set at 3,400.5 yards. 3,400 yards. This I got to stop. This is a whole episode, but I'm just going through as I find it. By the way, his actual total 46.24. The over/under was set at 3,400. He was about 1,300 yards over expectations. And just a reminder, halfway through the season, we were all looking at this going, I don't know if this is the guy or not. I know a lot of I'll give love to the Love loyalists who called in, and we were not getting along during that period. Shout out to you guys for hanging strong and hanging tough, but the guy was not playing like a starting quarterback. Anyways, why don't we take our first break, come back and look at some of the other observations and conversations that were being had. I don't really want it to be a national conversation. I want to save that for another day, but it's hard to not get into it because it's so much fun. Just you stupid bunch of jerks. You doubted and you hated and you suck, and we'll do it tomorrow. Let us take a break. By the way, don't forget, I need you to fill up my calendar for me, all right? Tell me fun events, things that are coming up, right? Weber's got a new grill coming out. I don't care what it is. If it's cool, I want to know about it. I want to put it in my calendar so I can look forward to it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just do the words I'm telling you. Tell me when cool stuff is about to be released so I can put it in my calendar, okay? Thanks. Take a break. We'll be right back. We all have smartphones, and we all know they're pretty amazing, but they also can be amazingly distracting, especially when we're around other people. So US Cellular wants us to reset our relationship with our phones by putting down our phones for $5. That's right, a company that sells phones wants us to put down our phones. And to see what we find, learn more at uscellular.com/built-for-us. In the hobby, it's not easy being a fan of ripping packs or repacks. We get all hyped up thinking we're going to get some high-value Jordan Love card, but with zero transparency on available cards and hit rates, it's all just a shot in the dark. Until now, introducing slab packs from arenaclub.com, the only repack that provides real value, a complete view on all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Now when I buy slab packs on Arena Club, it finally feels like I know what I'm getting. And honestly, the best thing for me and my son is the fact that we're kind of novices into this. When I walk into a card shop with my son, and a card says it costs $40, kind of just taking his word for it that that's a good value. So I appreciate the transparency on grading, as well as just getting excited about seeing what you could potentially get. Right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase by going to arenaclub.com/packdaddy. Wow, that's crazy offer. 10% off a $400 slab pack. That's $40 right there. Anyways, that's arenaclub.com/packdaddy for 10% off your first purchase.
This episode is supported by FX's Clipped, the scandalous story of the 2014 Clippers owner's racist remarks captured on tape and heard around the world. The series charts the tape's impact on a dysfunctional basketball organization striving to win against their reputation as the most cursed team in the league. Starring Lawrence Fishburne, Jackie Weaver, Cleopatra Coleman, and Ed O'Neill. FX's Clipped, streaming June 4th, only on Hulu.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
I used to beg for money. Now I beg for excitement. I should get back to begging for money. My Patreon's down to like 5 people now. It's such a sad thing. Not really. And I appreciate everybody in Patreon. Hang in there. Hold strong for me, please. I was so excited. I was like, oh, we're almost to 300. When we get to 300, it's going to be kind of crazy. And then very rapidly, we drop below 200 and just continue downward. By the way, patreon.com/pack_daddy. You can support the podcast for as little as $1 a month. Be greatly appreciated. May 25th. What happened on May 25th? I don't know. Thank you guys for hanging out. Have a good day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Article from Paul Brettel. Bulk of early practice reps from Packers wide receiver Jaden Reed coming from the slot. Again, we kind of, obviously, at the time we had a good inclination that he was probably going to be a slot guy, but we didn't really want to officially pigeonhole him as such. But this would be an example, again, of seeing something, kind of believing, confirming that this is probably the direction we're going, and it ended up being true. Keyshawn Nixon, a year after being one of the best kick returners in football, said, quote, "That really wasn't my best. I was just getting my feet wet, honestly. That's why this year's going to be real special." And we bought every word of that. And then that didn't happen. Zach Cruz says, "Might be the only one to find this interesting, but the Packers list rookie offensive lineman DJ Scaife as a center only on the team's roster. He started 52 games at right guard, right tackle at Miami." So this is, again, a perfect example of something that in 2024, it's like, why are you even reading that? And then in 2023, it's like, oh, interesting. Scaife, you say? Backup center? Kind of a need there. There's a guy to keep an eye on. There's also an article here by Ryan Wood. Now the lone veteran at safety, Packers' Darnell Savage is determined to use last season's benching as a springboard. This one's actually kind of tough because, again, if you go back and look at PFF, they actually said he did a pretty decent job. So it's hard to kind of come down hard on him like, whoa, you thought you were going to improve, huh, stupid? Well, he did. But obviously either not enough or very simply, it's not super a great fit for the direction we're headed, which kind of makes sense when you look at all the additions we made, especially when you look at not just, baseline, talent as a whole. In other words, when we look at every single checkbox and we go down the line and say all these different things and we make them all relatively equal and then say, okay, where did you grade out overall? It's also a question of specifically what we're doing, but also the way in which we want to do it, i.e. attitude. You look at the guys we brought in, they're kind of angry, violent D-bags, right? Which is a good thing. I appreciate that. I love that about them. Savage tried on occasion. I always loved his effort. I feel like he got a bad rap as a guy that was, quote-unquote, soft. I don't think so. I think he came up and tried to hit people. He just wasn't super great at it, which might still be the case with the new guys that we got. We'll have to see how it goes. But again, could Savage rebound, blah, blah, blah. Article by Cassidy Hill. Jonathan Owens could have walked away from football, but a moment changed his life and led him to the Packers. Well, darn that moment. Bill Huber article, despite elite win percentage, LaFleur has plenty to prove. And again, a lot of this, I'm not going to dig into the article and kind of relitigate it. It's more a question of where were our heads at and remembering the stuff that we didn't know. Remember, this was kind of a big talking point. I've mentioned it several times. LaFleur got no credit because of Aaron Rodgers, largely. In fact, it was kind of worse than that because anytime you could see, for example, bad play calling, you would say he made a bad decision. He went for it. So it's a negative. But all the positives, it's like, yeah, but you got Rodgers. So it's true that there was a ton of being unsure about Matt LaFleur and all that stuff, which again, at least for now, I mean, we could go into this year and things fall apart and we're right back to, boy, Love fell off or LaFleur is ruining Love and he's got to go, and we'll see where everything leads. But the conversation at this time last year compared to where we are now, there's no question about Love. There's no question about Matt LaFleur. Everything is just perfect. And Gutekunst as well, which could also fall apart if, guys don't take steps. If Van Ness doesn't improve and Wyatt doesn't seem to be able to do whatever, and, the rookie class is terrible, we're right back to where we were. But it's just kind of cool that we didn't know about Love. We didn't know about LaFleur. Gutekunst was really not very well liked because, remember, we didn't know how good last year's draft class was going to be. And even 2 years ago, we kind of liked that draft class, but we weren't sure yet. Now we're looking at 2 really solid draft classes. Plus, this year, there's plenty of guys that everybody's optimistic about. Just a complete 180. And partially Packer fans, but I would say especially the national media. Packer fans is kind of a mix of positive and negative or whatever, but the national media at large, this team is a joke. Matt LaFleur deserves no credit because of, Rodgers. The team's going to fall off without Rodgers. Gutekunst is a bumbling idiot. If you recall that whole situation. Are we sure? Are we sure he's any good at his job? Are we sure about that? Are we sure about that? Frickin' dork. DeAndre Hopkins also got released. That was on the 26th. So, of course, that discourse had to start. Bro, we need the guy, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, kind of an interesting thing that I hadn't really thought about. Andy Herman, May 26th, tweeted out, the Packers signed 4 veteran safeties to 1-year deals this offseason who all need to earn their jobs. Rudy Ford, Jonathan Owens, Tavarius Moore, and Dallin Levitt. All 4 of those guys got 1-year deals. Think about how differently this all could have gone if they had, for example, given Ford, based on having a decent performance or whatever, a 2 or 3 year deal, or Owens, or any of these guys. We would be in a very different situation. So it's kind of interesting to look at sort of the long-term prospects, where the Packers obviously were unhappy with the safety situation for a while, right? The Savage situation was obviously unfortunate with giving him or deciding to give him the option, so you're kind of stuck. But the bottom line is everybody gets 1 more year. And we're hoping that we see it from Savage or Ford or Owens or Moore or Levitt or anybody. But if not, we got to do a major overhaul. Right, so this has been this major overhaul that took place with Xavier McKinney and Bullard and Williams and all that. This has been, 365 days in the making. This decision, this direction started last year when all these guys got 1-year deals. Kind of an interesting little nugget. Couple quick observations here. I don't want to, again, dig too much into this. This would be more of a for another day thing, but Bill Huber posted an article, with Love, here comes the blitz. Obviously, with the premise being, now that Rodgers is gone, you got this young guy. Teams are going to really put him on his heels. I did a tiny bit of digging into it. Interestingly enough, first of all, it does seem to be true. For the season, he was blitzed 37% of the time. Real quick. So Aaron Rodgers' highest that I could find in recent history was 2020. It was 33% of the time. He was usually high 20s. So there's no question there was a higher blitz percentage for Jordan Love. The interesting thing, though, is if you look at the postseason, Jordan Love was blitzed 18% of the time. Now, a very small sample size. Some teams just don't blitz very often, so you may just be going up against that. For example, in week 1, Jordan Love was very rarely blitzed, most likely just because that's not how the team operates. But it is interesting to me, and it would be interesting to kind of do a deeper dive into it to see if perhaps teams learn pretty quickly that this is not the best way to go. And a couple little points on that. In week 2 against Atlanta, he was blitzed 48% of the time. So about 50% of the time almost he was blitzed. He had a 77 PFF grade when blitzed, a 54 when not blitzed. And then if you look at the postseason, where he was, again, very rarely blitzed, he was only blitzed 18% of the time. He had a 90 90.1 PFF grade, 90.3 passing grade when blitzed, 64 when not blitzed. So by all means blitz, and almost nobody did. So, and it does make sense for a couple reasons. Number one, Jordan Love did play behind a pretty good offensive line. If you blitz and you don't get home, you're screwed. But I think that's doubly true with a guy like Jordan Love, who's shown to do a really good job processing. Some people might panic, especially if they don't have a very good offensive line, but if you can be calm, cool, and collected and poised in the pocket and understand that if they're blitzing, somebody's open, and knowing where to put your eyes, where to look, and where to deliver the ball, you can really hurt teams when they blitz you. And this is why generally, the veteran, really good quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, whatever, you don't blitz them very much, because unless they have a bad offensive line and you can manipulate it, in other words, Rodgers is great against the blitz. I don't know if he will be necessarily with the Jets, depending on how good their offensive line is this year. But if that offensive line sucks, blitz him all day. But if you give him enough time, and they don't need very much time to be able to process stuff and know where to go with the football, it's better to just drop your guys in coverage and hope that you either generate a pressure with your front 4 or 5 or whatever, and just try to do a good job on the back end being more disruptive to his brain as opposed to, like he wants to go there, but nobody's open kind of a deal. Herman did a YouTube video, the biggest off-season battles. You had number 1 backup quarterback. Now, this one's funny in hindsight because, again, it's only interesting in the off-season. To sit where we are now and look back, it's like, who gives a crap? But beyond that, it's also kind of a silly thing because it was a question of who's going to win between Danny Etling and, a guy that we just drafted. Like, come on. Running back, wide receiver, offensive line, inside linebacker, cornerback, safety, pretty much everybody on the team or every position. But those are going to be the biggest camp battles, which again, for most of them, looking in hindsight, it's like, maybe not so much. All right, let's take a break. We'll round out the last couple days of training camp and what the buzz was. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Have you ever experienced turbulence on a flight and wondered why?
And you can see all the terrain around you. You've got no issue with visibility or anything?
No, everything's PG.
Maybe you've sat on the tarmac for hours wondering why your plane isn't moving.
Well, we're outside here. They're saying the ramp is closed. They won't let us park because of Air Force One.
Listen in on the conversations between pilots and air traffic controllers on the Air Traffic Out of Control podcast.
510 declaring an emergency. There's smoke in the cabin. I need to make a landing right now on 31 left.
We have the most interesting, wild, and funny ATC recordings you will ever hear. Check out Air Traffic Out of Control wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Start off with this gem. On today's show, I take a deep dive into the legend that is Samori Toure. Okay, so maybe not a legend yet, but there is a ton of buzz surrounding the second-year wide receiver, and he's been the offseason cult hero of 2023. This is peak offseason silliness. Samori Toure was never good at anything ever. The guy had like one good play. He was never going to win any of these jobs, but we had to have the discussion. We had to have the arguments, didn't we? Oh, he's really good. He could be good. He could. It's an article written here by Bill Huber again. The title is Packers have one of the NFL's worst skill position groups. Without a top quarterback, veteran tight end, or established receiver, the Packers have a lot to prove in 2023. This comes, again, from kind of pulling from the narrative out there, in this case, once again, PFF. Says the findings are based on Pro Football Focus's rollout of top players at each position. It says, at quarterback, Jordan Love is number 26, which we already discussed. No receiver made PFF's top 32, and no tight end made its top 15. And then, led by Aaron Jones at number 7, the Packers are one of a few teams with 2 running backs in PFF's top 32. So obviously things look pretty bleak from this perspective. They don't have even a top 25 quarterback. They don't have a number one wide receiver at all, and they don't have any good tight ends. Man, 2023 must have sucked. Goes on to kind of delve into this a little bit deeper, which is, again, it just continues to be funny. Says 4 teams had 0 on that combined list. So I should read this first paragraph. It says, given how the number of high-quality receivers far exceed the other positions, Packer Central took PFF's rankings and made one combined ranking of skill position players using the top 32 receivers and the top 15 at quarterback, running back, and tight end. 4 teams had 0 on that list. Patriots, Broncos, Panthers, Cardinals. All 4 of those teams sucked. Then, the Packers are one of 5 teams with 1. The Packers, playoff team. The Commanders, garbage. The Lions, playoff team. The Bears, garbage. And the Falcons, pretty garbage. The Jacksonville Jaguars, LA Chargers, and New Orleans Saints led the way with 5. None of those teams were actually any good. Which again, remember, it's not like, well, it's weird that they had these good players and they weren't very good. No. The problem is the rankings to begin with. Pretending we know who's going to be good and how good and all that kind of stuff, and it's just wildly incorrect. Despite most of these guys we saw the year before, and we already know how good they were. And we still can't do this. The Minnesota Vikings paced the NFC North with 4. So the Vikings were the best in the NFC North. The Packers and Lions were next with a paltry 1, and then the Bears had... it was all 3 were in the next tier. Bears, Lions, Packers. The Lions only having Amon-Ra and the Bears having DJ Moore. It's weird having such a wide disparity despite being so similar. I wonder if it's because maybe they were way off on the quarterbacks who were seen prior to the season as being pretty equal. Jared Goff and Justin Fields. Interesting. The May 31st practice open to the media. Big news, David Bakhtiari is back in practice. Oh boy. Y'all know what that means. Am I right? Tucker Kraft, Grant DeBose, Dontavian Wicks not practicing though, so watch out for that. Paul Brettel comments, 6'6", 253-pound Luke Musgrave can get downfield quick. This was such an exciting time, too. It was the first time we got to see the tight ends, and especially Musgrave. I remember watching, forgot about it, again, that's why it's fun to go back and look. I remember watching him and just thinking, holy crap, that boy is fast. And this was sort of our first introduction to that fact. Herman gives the caveat about OTAs and shorts and all that stuff. And then goes on to say, but Luke Musgrave looks fantastic today. Quick, soft hands, body control, over-the-shoulder catch deep down the field. He's been as advertised. Also, kind of a funny side-by-side couple of tweets here. Starting offensive line, Jones, Jenkins, Myers, Runyon, Tom. So what you see right out of the gate is more or less how things are going to pan out. Now, I think Rashid, I believe this is injury-related at left tackle. But then you flip over to the edge rushers, and it was Hollins and Preston, our first edge rushers out there. Now, this was kind of interesting. Again, Rashawn injury and all that kind of stuff. But you start looking at it and going, why Hollins? I don't understand. And it's like, man, the Packers really like him, and it's all this stuff. At the end of the day, though, Hollins, he wasn't even on the team. So on one side of things, you look at it and go, as you see it is as it is. There's no controversy, all the talk about maybe this, that, or the other, none of it. This is what it is. They know what they're doing. On the other side of things, it's nothing like what you expect it to be. You look at it and go, man, why would Hollins be above, Lucas Van Ness? Why would he be above this guy or that guy? Dude doesn't even make the team. Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas were not there. And in their place, Corey Ballantyne and Shamar Jean-Charles were the starting cornerbacks. Again, funny to look back at where we were at this time. Having no idea what Corey Valentine was about to bring, or Carrington Valentine, and Shamar. I can't even remember the last time we had a conversation about Shamar Jean-Charles. But at this time last year, could be the dude, man. I don't know. Who knows? Certainly the number 2 slot guy, if nothing else. Defense. On the interior, you had Wooden, Slayton, and Clark. Linebackers, including the outside guys, Hollins, Quay, Campbell, Smith. Corners, you had Ballantyne and Shamar, and then safeties, Savage and Ford. Just look at how different that is compared to today. And again, I understand some guys don't show up to OTAs. There's a lot of injuries, all that kind of stuff. But the defensive line of Wooden, Slayton, Clark is going to be replaced with, again, because of the change in formation partially, but it's Clark and Wyatt. And then on the edge, it's going to be Rashawn and Preston. If not Rashawn and Lucas Van Ness, I honestly think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. At linebacker, instead of Quay and Campbell, it's going to be Quay and Cooper, and presumably somebody else. At corner, it's not Ballantyne and Shamar. It's presumably going to be Jair. I'm guessing he's going to be there. Jair and, I don't know, hopefully Stokes is going to be healthy and ready to rock and roll to at least get the first crack at it. And then at safety, instead of Savage and Ford, it's going to be Xavier McKinney, which still blows my mind that that's a reality, and more than likely Bullard. And instead of, some of the stuff we're going to see with the slot and all these different, we're going to be seeing a lot of safeties out. I mean, just think about how crazy that's going to be, because that's the other cool thing about OTAs. A lot of times you only care, like I care about Lucas Van Ness, and he's playing third team, and it's like, oh, this is so stupid. Now it's like first team is going to be McKinney and Bullard. That's awesome. Then you're going to have second team and third team safeties and also rotating at slot and everything else. And I want to see it all. There's not a lot of people that I'm looking at going, I don't freaking care. Very excited to get first looks at a lot of these guys. By the way, safety number 3 at the time, the guy that came in next after Ford and Savage, was Tarvarius Moore. Another one of those things that when you first hear it, you start going through your notes and like, okay, let's take note of that. We got bro, irrelevant. And then we just get a ton of flurry of things. I'm not going to go through them, but Van Ness beats Nyman, and Love fires into double coverage, et cetera, et cetera. Savage picks off Jordan Love. I think it's going to be fun to get re-excited about guys. I mean, you remember how big of a deal Musgrave was last year as a rookie, and then it kind of, we got a bunch of new guys to get excited about, and, there's second and third year guys that we can get re-excited about. He just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. But that was a big deal addition that we made. The press conference after practice, Matt LaFleur, when asked about how Luke Musgrave, quote-unquote, looks different than what Packers have had at tight end in the past, Matt LaFleur says he is different. Immediately got first-team reps. He goes on to say, he does have an elite trait in that he can flat fly, and he's a large target. I mean, let's not forget, it's not impossible that Musgrave emerges as I don't want to overstate it, but really quality tight end. And that's leaving out Tucker Kraft is also a possibility. But at the end of May, Luke Musgrave was all the buzz. Sounds like the main receiving target, which was, we talked about it a lot last year, but it seemed like Romeo Doubs, because Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs were just on the same page, which was true at the time, but I think what we forgot to acknowledge is that he's going to build rapport with the other guys, and, that's essentially what ended up happening. Play of the day, Malik Heath. Okay. Well, let's do some rapid fire here and go through some of the different articles that popped up. Packers wide receiver Romeo Doubs is playing faster and showing off chemistry with Jordan Love. Bakhtiari won't be a pissed-off old veteran. Highlights from practice 5. Jordan Love was 15 of 21. He went 7 of 10, which, the good. He went 7 of 10 on the 2-minute drive with one of the incompletions being a spike. The bad, long ball to Romeo Doubs was picked by Darnell Savage. And Corey Ballantyne dropped a pick 6. During 2-minute, he overthrew Jaden Reed. Player of the day, Romeo Doubs. Remember, I'm just remembering it. Romeo Doubs was absolutely being hyped up big time. Corners, Corey Ballantyne and Keandre Thomas with Shamar Jean-Charles in the slot. Danny Etling ahead of Sean Clifford on the race to be the number 2 quarterback, etc., etc. That's the most important part of that. Another article here says, Jonathan Owens provides Packers with sound tackling at the safety position. All right. Packers A.J. Dillon with the right mindset heading into crucial season. Talk about your all-time backfires. Packers counting on Watson to score points, deliver pointers. Packers rookies Colby Wooden and Carl Brooks take advantage of opportunities at OTA practice. An article that says, this is Huber again, Packers need breakout seasons from third-year players. And on the list, Josh Myers, who got worse. TJ Slayton, who absolutely proved nothing. Eric Stokes, who really just didn't even play. Isaiah McDuffie, I think did a pretty good job. Royce Newman, that didn't go so well. By the way, I'm not disagreeing with Huber. These are guys that needed it. I'm just saying that everybody that needed to step up just really was god-awful. Cornerback Shamar Jean-Charles. So there's that. Here's 10 questions with 100 days until Packers start of the season. Again, it's Huber. Is Jordan Love any good? Valid question at that period of time. Will A.J. Dillon be money in a contract year? The answer, no. Is Christian Watson really a number one wide receiver? Sad to say we didn't get to answer that question, because I stand by the fact that I think it's yes. I also stand by the fact that he doesn't have very much time to prove that before, things go a different direction. Do the Packers have an impact tight end? Is David Bakhtiari truly healthy? It's a legitimate question. Can Joe Barry lead a winning defense? Will Rashawn Gary be dominant in 2023? All these questions make me sad. It's like we didn't do anything we needed to do. I don't know how we got to the playoffs. Jordan Love, I guess, is the answer. Is the defensive line stout enough versus the run? No. Do the Packers have two safeties? No. Can someone make a clutch field goal? Bro, ask different questions, all right? I like the first question, is Jordan Love any good? Every other question, I don't like it. Don't ask me those questions, ever. Packers searching for a defined defensive role for Tariq Carpenter. Interesting enough, Sports Illustrated's Connor Orr did 100 bold predictions ahead of the 2023 season. He said after going 8-9 with Aaron Rodgers in 2022, and with sportsbooks establishing an over-under at 7.5, the Packers will go 10-7 with Jordan Love in 2023. He says, this isn't an Aaron Rodgers take, Orr wrote. This is a Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, and Brian Gutekunst take. Now, funny enough, he was right while also being wrong. I mean, he was right about, I guess, taking the over. Actually, he wasn't wrong at all. He said the Packers would win 10 games. Well, they won 9 regular season games and then beat the Dallas Cowboys to win exactly 10. So, nice job. We got Paul Brettel, 11 observations from 2 weeks of Packers OTAs. Up and down play from Jordan Love. Rudy Ford, the early starting safety next to Darnell Savage. Attendance during the first week, David Bakhtiari, Preston Smith, Dallin Levitt, Rasul Douglas, Shire Alexander, Jonathan Garvin, and Elton Jenkins did not participate. The second week, Smith, Levitt, Bakhtiari, and Jenkins were all present. So a lot of guys didn't really show up, especially early on. Something else to keep an eye on. Jordan Love and Romeo Dobbs' chemistry. Lucas Van Ness with the twos. Luke Musgrave is different. Runyon and Myers are still starting. And then Jaden Reed and Samori Toure. It says, along with Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed has been the third starting wide receiver for the Packers, not surprisingly in the slot. It says Toure, meanwhile, has taken a lot of snaps as well, and at times with the ones, etc., etc. If you're keeping track, that wasn't 11. I skipped some. Paul Brettel writes another article that's titled, Run Defense is Mindset That Packers Defense Trying to Unlock. Well, frickin' try harder. By the way, again, it is kind of interesting, right? Run defense is a mindset. So while we did change scheme, and we did bring in different coaches, and some things like that have changed, if you think run defense is a mindset, then mindset is also something that needs to change, and that's one of the biggest changes the Packers seem to have made, is emphasizing going out and getting coaches and players that have a certain mindset. We got one thing to watch from each Packers position. We'll just skip down to a couple. First of all, any standouts for the RB3 role. Musgrave and Kraft's blocking. Yosh Nijman and Zach Tom. It's funny that there was so much question about this, which there's been a good amount more clarity on since. For example, where Yosh Nijman stands and where Zach Tom stands. That's pretty well been cleared up by the Packers at this point. How many different combinations do we see at center and right guard? Where is Tariq Carpenter playing and how will he be utilized? He won't. Mike Spofford wrote an article, Rookie receiver Dontavian Wicks fits the Green Bay Packers way. Again, this is one that I'm going to look at and be like, okay. Yeah, he's going to be real good because he fits the way. Give me a break. But it's cool reading through some of this because we really don't talk about Wicks at all. And we certainly weren't really talking about him much because even this article, which goes in depth, I mean, it's not that interesting at the time because you don't expect anything out of the guy. But I'll just start down here. It says, you can really feel the character and passion of a person when they're here, and his love for the game, Vrabel said. He just knew the system inside and out and could communicate. He carries himself with a very professional demeanor. I think he's a true pro right away. I haven't had to talk to him about how to study or go about it because he already had that mentality about him. When I left, I think everybody in our building was like, yep, I think that guy fits the Green Bay Packer way and what we want. So very cool, and it's also cool because it translates. He's real smart. He's a hard worker. He understands how to be a pro. He carries himself as such. And as such, he goes out there and he looks like a veteran on the football field. We got early 53-man roster predictions. I'm not going to say who because I don't want it to seem adversarial, but it's just funny to look at. On the 53, Jordan Love and Danny Etling, with Sean Clifford fighting for a practice squad spot. Running backs Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and Lou Nichols, with Patrick Taylor, Tyler Goodson, and Henry Pearson fighting for practice squad spots. Wide receiver Watson, Dobbs, Turay, Reed, Wicks, and DeBose, with Melton, Cotton, Heath, and Watts trying to get on the practice squad. A lot of the other stuff was accurate or close enough. Justin Hollins was on the 53. Safeties, you got Savage, Ford, Levitt, Gaines, Owens, Johnson, with Carpenter, Moore, and Sapp fighting for practice squad spots. So a lot of this is relatively accurate. I mean, the practice squad, it's not super important who made it and who got cut, but some of this stuff is pretty interesting. Again, the whole dynamic with the backup quarterbacks being like a really big competition and who knows, and looks like Etling's going to win and Clifford, and it's, at the end of the day, it was pretty straightforward. Superbook picks, Packers in only 5 games. The Superbook Sportsbook set lines on all 272 NFL games. The Packers are favored in only 5, which is interesting because the people that, like Connor Orr, picked the Packers to do well, a big part of the reason why is because they had a relatively easy schedule. So to play mostly bad teams and be favored in 5 of those games, that's really something. Some of the quotes from within the article: everybody always talks about which quarterback is worth the most for the point spread. It's very subjective. What we think as odds makers is judged by the bettors who actually bet the money. So obviously a big part of this is not believing in Jordan Love. Article goes on to say that they were picked in 5 games this year. It was 12 the year before. Both of those ended up being very wrong. They were opening as road underdogs against the Bears. I remember that, actually, because we talked about that a lot all the way up to as far as the Bears being like 1-point favorites, 1.5. You could possibly argue that maybe, given home field advantage, the Packers are seen as like the better team, but still they're not the favorites. And again, looking back, what a joke. But they were underdogs against the Bears. They were underdogs against the Falcons. They were favored against the Saints, and were also home favorites against the Vikings, the Rams, the Buccaneers, and then the Bears. Those are the only games that they were favorited in. Also was getting into the season of drama with Aaron Rodgers and whatnot. Bill Huber posted an article, Rodgers to The Athletic. I talk to people I like. Remember that quote? This was after the whole situation of not answering the phone and all this hemming and hawing, and then somehow Schneidman got a sit down with Rodgers and got him to say that lovely quote of I talk to the people I like. Dig a little bit more into that. There's a ton of quotes here. Asked about the two sides' differing stories, Rodgers credited the disconnect to the Packers not using FaceTime to call it. I have 0 or 1 bar at the house. You call me. Sometimes it goes through. Most of the time it drops and doesn't go through, Rodgers said. Everybody who knows me, when I'm out west, they know that's how to get a hold of me. So you can say whatever you want about that, but that's the effing truth. Goes on to say, before I went into the darkness, I hit him up, said, hey, there's some stuff swirling around here. We should get together, you, me, and Matt. Rodgers said he entered the darkness retreat thinking that he would retire, but emerged feeling good about either retiring or continue to play. He contacted Dunn, who told Rodgers the Packers had been shopping him. Rodgers then told Dunn to tell Gutekunst he wanted to be traded to the Jets. He didn't have much else to say to the GM. And this is so dumb. I mean, it was dumb of Dunn to say that. It's also overly sensitive stuff from Rodgers for it to go that quick. Like, everything's fine, and then Dunn tells you something that is stupid. Not because they were, first of all, of course they're quote-unquote shopping you. They're talking to teams trying to gather information because they don't know what Rodgers is going to do. And if Rodgers comes out and says, I want to be traded, you want to make sure that you have an understanding of how to handle that process. But Rodgers got all pissy about it, like, oh, you're going to trade me? Screw you, I want to go to the Jets. Like, oh, good Lord, dude. Goes on to say, did Brian text me more than I texted him? Yeah, but did I ghost him? No. Rodgers said, I texted him back, and there was back and forth that we had, and so this is the story you want to go with? You're going to stand on this hill of austerity and say that arguably in this conversation of the best player in your franchise history, you're going to say I couldn't get a hold of him and that's why we had to move on? First of all, arrogant nonsense. You being quote-unquote the best player in franchise history is irrelevant in this conversation. And the fact that it keeps coming up, not just by Rodgers, but all the Rodgers crusaders out there, it's irrelevant to the conversation. Stop saying it. It's stupid and arrogant. So they're not allowed to make the right decision because you're the greatest and you get to do whatever you want? Is that honestly what we're trying to say here? So Gutekunst is trying to contact you. He's trying to talk to you. You're not responding, and he moves forward with a decision. And that's wrong because you're the greatest ever? God. And he says, come on, man, just tell the truth. You wanted to move on. You didn't like the fact that we didn't communicate all the time. Listen, I talk to the people that I like, which is hilarious because it's you just admitted it. First of all, did the Packers want to move on? Yes. I don't think that they necessarily ever denied that. I mean, they didn't say it because they don't want to come out and be like, yeah, screw this guy, we want to move on. But yeah, of course they do. He says, you didn't like the fact that we didn't communicate all the time. Okay, so again, to be clear, you're kind of admitting that this was a one-way thing. He wanted to communicate and you didn't. And Gutekunst was upset about that. So don't act like, oh no, this is a two-way thing. And then to end it with, I talk to who I want. Okay, well then you just finally told the truth. Congratulations. Anyways, there was that whole situation. But anyways, without going through the fine-tooth comb every single question about the roster or whatever, that's kind of where we were at last year. Most of the questions, I would say, were not really very good questions, partially because at the end of the day, they're almost all irrelevant. They're only interesting in the offseason. RB3, right? Who's going to make the practice squad? Bro, I don't even think about the practice squad in the regular season. I know it matters, but it matters a lot more in the offseason to everybody than it does in the regular season. You know, the constant talk about DeBose and Samori Toure. Don't care. Tight end 3 and 4. But, you know, the interesting thing I think that makes this fun is that some of these things will come true. There's going to be articles about somebody that looks like a stud that's going to be a stud. We're not going to know who that is. Most of the articles about this guy looks great are irrelevant. Just like most of the negative ones, like Jaden Reed is fumbling and whatever, that kind of stuff is going to be irrelevant. But it's still going to be fun to get our first glimpses of these people and pretend that what we're seeing matters a ton. That'll be fun. Anyways, I'm out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.